You ever seen an Instagram reel that misrepresents a manga that you like so atrociously that you decide that you have to make a video essay about said manga?
Forget about the female childhood friend. It's all about the homies now.
What? Yeah, me neither. Oh no, it's happening. Yes, Shuzo Oshimi. As any trans video essay maker, it's a sort of rite of passage to make a video about him or his work at least once. If you're a viewer of mine, there's a good chance you know of Oshimi's 2012 work, Inside Mari, thanks to this amazing video right here. Seriously, go watch it if you haven't. And while Inside Mari has sparked a lot of discussion within queer spaces online, I feel like his most recently completed manga often gets overshadowed by his previous work. Enter 2020's Welcome Back, Alice. Alice is a complicated work to talk about because for as many questions as Oshimi wanted to cram into it, none of them have easy answers. And those answers are incredibly personal and can shift drastically depending on who you are and what you take away from it. Because of that, I think it's super cool and definitely deserves to have a lot more people talking about it. Here, I'll go first. I wonder when we all change so much. Is the opening line of Oshimi's take on a high school love triangle that brings all the most ugly parts of adolescence, growing up, gender expectations, and sex into the forefront of its narrative. We follow Kamikawa Yohei, or just Yo as people tend to call him, Mitani Yui, and Maroda Kei. All three are middle school students and have been friends since they were kids. Only things start to get strained between them when Yo falls for Mitani, while Mitani is more interested in Kei. Yo is incredibly jealous of Kei. He gets all the girls, he's good at sports, and just generally well liked. This jealousy boils over when he sees Mitani and Kei kissing after Mitani confessed her feelings for him. Yo runs off, and the next day Kei tries to say hi, which leads to Yo running away again. He starts to seem isolated, as without his two friends, he doesn't really talk to anyone. Then it's revealed that Kei has moved away, leaving the three's relationship forever stunted. Fast forward a couple years, and now Yo and Mitani are starting high school. Yo wants things to change and to rebuild his relationship with her. All seems to be going fine until this new blonde-haired girl starts talking to Yo in a really strangely familiar way, walking with him to their classroom. And as roll starts to get called, it's revealed that this strange new girl is actually Maroda Kei. This is where I think it's important to talk about the key question Oshimi posed when beginning work on this manga. In an interview he states, "I sometimes say it's very painful to be a man. Like, it would be nice if I could become a girl, wholly from the inside." This may sound familiar if you've read the afterwords of Inside Mari, however, here he goes further, continuing, "I had a strong desire for that, but now I've started to think, is that really the case? Maybe it is farther than that, like wanting to quit being a man, the it has to be this way that subconsciously exists inside of you, or the you have to endure it because you're a boy. It felt like these orders were coming from inside of me. I felt like I want to find out what that is." This desire is explored through all three main characters, but is really embodied by Kei. As they state during their introduction, "I was once a male, but have since relinquished that." This is central to their character, as they will often reply to people asking if they are male or female, with a response along the lines of, "I have quit being a man." So with Kei back in the mix, the three's relationship gets weird. Kei is very clingy to Yo and invites him over to their place to help unpack. While there, Yo asks, "What happened? Why are you dressed like a woman?" To which Kei expectedly answers, "I have quit being a boy." Yo then asks the question in many of our minds, what does that mean? Kei then says, "For me, all the things that are said about this is what men do and it's normal for a man are all dead wrong. It's simply because I thought this way would suit me better. That's it." While this may seem trivial to get hung up on, Kei repeatedly using words like quit, gave up, and relinquished to refer to their moving on from manhood is crucial in trying to get what they're all about. They never say that they quit being a man to live as a woman because they don't see it that way. It's not like that at all. When did we start to change? When did society start to expect us to act more like men and women? What does that even mean? These questions get brought up time and time again as our characters take these frustrations out on one another. But before we can move forward again, Kei is kissing Yo, something that Yo clearly did not consent to, and this is where the manga turns a lot of people off, rightfully so. Kei, for the first arc of the story, is almost a completely different character than how they end up at the end of it all. During these opening chapters, Kei repeatedly makes sexual advances on Yo and to a lesser extent Mitani, and then they just stop after a point. It's not really clear why they act like this in the beginning, nor is it ever really acknowledged afterward. These scenes are incredibly uncomfortable and establish Kei as this sexual deviant who has no regard for what others are okay with. Initially, I just wrote these scenes off as growing pains for the character, Oshimi trying to figure out what he wants to do with Kei and their place within the narrative. After all, one of the main complaints about Alice is that it seemingly goes nowhere, and even if it does, it takes quite a while. But what really changed how I thought was that maybe Kei is trying to combat the fact that Yo and Mitani still view them as a man by trying to use their new looks to prove that they're not. Obviously, the way that they are going about this is extremely misguided, but I think that serves as a way to explain why Kei is being like this. Now, I did kind of lie. While this part of the story isn't directly discussed by the characters, Oshimi in the final author afterward does sort of bring it up, where he writes, "When I had Kei say stop being a boy, I thought that the theme of this manga was where to go after stopping. The desire to quit is clear, but how does one actually go about it? Kei behaving as the sexy girl in the manga with the female appearance is actually struggling with the fact that they can't truly quit being a man." So how I read this is that Kei, even if it seems like it from the outside, they are not immune to the social confines of what they believe gender to be, at least not in the beginning of the story. Kei, just like the rest of the characters, is actively trying to figure out their place within these intricate social systems of how gender is supposed to be. The only difference is that they've already made the first step in giving up their masculinity. Now they're trying to figure out what they have left. Does this make the things that they do fine? No, obviously not, but I do think it's not as one-dimensional as some people may make it out to be. The next day, Kei approaches Yo, seemingly just to tease him, and Yo runs off to the bathroom. We meet these three guys who are discussing if they'd hook up with Kei or not. I don't remember their names, they're not important, but it does show that people are actively talking about Kei behind their back. Eventually, Kei comes in and drags Yo back to the classroom, where they both go over to Matani's desk, and Kei tells them they should all have a reunion over at their place. Both are pretty hesitant, as we can see on Kei's face that they definitely have some ulterior motives in mind, but regardless, after school, they end up over at Kei's. The tension between the three is palpable, because the last time they were all together, Mitani had expressed her feelings for Kei, and Yo was left heartbroken. After a quick toast, Yo tries to lighten the mood, which causes Mitani to begin to cry. Why? Why did it turn out this way, Kei? You were so handsome. Why? Mitani is a character that I'll go more into detail about later, but her whole relationship with Kei is really unique. She continually struggles with figuring out how she feels about them. Before, she was in love, and now she can't grapple with the fact that the person that she thought she loved has changed so much. Kei leans across the table and tells her to touch them, all while Yo watches from the sidelines. Kei places Mitani's hand on their face and says, "So, how does it feel? What does your body say while feeling mine?" Mitani replies by saying that she doesn't know, and Kei pulls her closer, saying how they like themselves so much more now, and that the person that she loved wasn't really them, then pulls her in for a kiss. Yo pushes them away angrily, and then Kei puts their arms around him and says, "You're scared I'll defile Mitani. Is that what you're afraid of? Why? Is it that you can't allow that as a man? Get rid of that," as Kei kisses Yo too. This goes on for a minute and is wildly uncomfortable, causing Mitani to get up and leave. Yo follows her out, and she puts her head on his chest, saying how it's all just so frustrating, as we cut back to Kei looking out of the window. A man with lust. The first author afterward lets us peer into how Oshimi thinks about sex, what sex should be, how he should be in a world driven by sexual desire. He largely asks, what is lust? It's said that humans have three major cravings: food, sleep, and sex, but for him, he states, it's very tough to see myself like this, as a man with lust. He goes on to say how if you, as a man, do not have a sex drive, you get called a passive male or are told that you are unmanly. Not just from others, but from the man inside of you. You're a failure as a man. He says how he looks up to men who can perform this manly duty to the fullest, but he cannot be like them. He describes himself as someone who is a pathetic dirty, incapable, inadequate man, someone who is scared of sex and violence. To him, these are interwoven. There cannot be sex without violence, to which he explores later on just what that means. At the very end, though, he says, "If only I could be a girl. I used to fantasize about becoming a girl, but that's only an escape that ignores what it's actually like to be a woman." Through this series, he wishes to confront and deconstruct the concepts of lust and the man within himself. And here's where I found an interesting contrast between how he represents himself and how he chooses to write Kei as a character. You could argue this is just semantics, but when Kei says, "I'm giving up being a man," it's different than when Oshimi says, "I'm giving up being a man." See, you could tell it's different because I changed my inflection. But really, it is different. Kei, who was before a successful, popular boy who had women interested in them, when they stepped away from their manhood, they were in a position that allowed them to make that choice. Now, we never truly know how or why Kei changed, but we don't really need to, right? Kei is Kei. This is how they are, and that's all that matters. When Oshimi calls himself a failure as a male, it seems his only escape is giving up his masculinity, and initially his view on how to do so was by leaning into femininity. We see Kei do this, and I think Oshimi knows that this isn't sustainable, that it isn't actually solving his deeply rooted conflict within himself. It's merely just putting a band-aid on it. The next day, it's clear that Yo is conflicted on his feelings of lust towards Kei. In his fantasies, he depicts Kei as this perfect, almost ethereal woman who is making all of the moves. Yo doesn't have to worry about being the man with Kei because the other part of him still sees them as a man. This makes Yo frustrated. Sure, he may like Kei's body, but Kei is still a man, right? Even if they do everything to escape the labels of man or woman, most people will still make an attempt to slot them into one or the other. Mitani and Yo talk about Kei during their lunch break. Mitani asks Yo how he feels about them. Kei obviously likes you, she says, while Yo seems to act surprised. He says how Kei is a boy, after all. He doesn't feel anything for them. So he asks Mitani how she feels, to which she says that she still likes Kei, and Yo starts to break a little, rapidly talking about how she should just forget Kei and find someone new, someone who would actually, support her and care about her, someone like him. Mitani says that she wants to talk later with a smile, to which he happily agrees. All the while, Kei is watching them from a window above, just like in the previous chapter. Mitani and Yo spend the next chapter in a karaoke booth, talking about how Kei used to be in the three's relationship when they were kids, which eventually leads to them gazing at each other. Before they're able to kiss, their time gets cut short, and they proceed to walk home together as they reach for the other's hand. Yo comes home elated about the experience and imagining a future where he's with Mitani, until that excitement gets cut short by an all-too-familiar voice coming from the kitchen. Kei is over at his house. They both go up to Yo's room, and Kei says how they know that Yo and Mitani went on a date, and asks him if he wants to practice doing it with a girl, and Kei forces the two onto the bed. Yo gets up and asks, "Why the hell are you always doing this kind of stuff, taking advantage of someone's sexual desires," and tells them to leave Mitani alone. Kei replies by saying, "I quit being a boy, and so when I asked myself where to go, I chose to be like this. However, I still don't know where to go." They then pull Yo back onto the bed, but this time he can't get up. I really do dislike how Kei is portrayed in these earlier chapters, and we're going to skip forward after this because it's a lot of the same. It's tough to talk about these moments because even though Oshimi is, in a way, characterizing his own struggles with lust, it's really not a pleasant way to go about it. Even understanding how he feels about lust, how it always comes with pain, scenes like this just make it hard to recommend this manga to a lot of people. That said, the line Kei delivers beforehand, "I still don't know where to go," is really important. It calls back to my earlier discussion on the final afterword, leaning more into femininity in an attempt to rid yourself of masculinity. But here, it's further than that. How does one quit being a man? The question we keep coming back to is there, but then Oshimi struggles with a new question. Where do you go? And maybe, just maybe, the place where to go after quitting has already been lost forever. So fucking gross. is what Mitani calls Yo after learning about what happened between him and Kei at his house that night. By this point in the story, Mitani and Yo have been dating for a little while, but Mitani struggles with keeping Yo interested in her. He likes her a lot, he always has, but every time he seems to be alone with Kei, something happens. Even when he tells her that he didn't initiate, she still doesn't want to hear it. She doesn't want Yo to get near Kei anymore. So she exercises the one power she believes she has over Yo, playing with his sexual desire, just like how Kei has. The only difference is that, to her, this is her role. This is her fulfilling her duty as a woman and as a woman in a relationship with a man. Yo is only still having these moments with Kei because she is failing as a woman, failing to keep him sexually satisfied. And when she finally is with Yo, and it seems like they're gonna do it, Yo can't. This only adds to her self-doubt about her own womanhood. She can't play the part she's been told she's supposed to. She ends up turning into this manipulative, abusive girlfriend to Yo. She constantly exploits his lust and makes him give up a lot of things that bring him joy in an effort to make him grow closer to her. This is what I believe led Oshimi to ultimately change his thought process from inside Mari to what we see now. There, he wishes to be a girl wholly from the inside to escape the prison that is masculinity. But now, he realizes that that would only be exchanging one set of social challenges for another. I think while Yo explores his lust, Kei his struggles with masculinity, Mitani is him trying to reflect upon how he previously viewed womanhood. And you know what? Fine, I'll talk about being trans now. You've waited long enough. I can't talk about manhood and womanhood this long without self-inserting at least a little bit. I think a common misconception people have, whether on purpose or not, is the assumption that trans people believe that they will be fixed by transitioning. At least anecdotally, I've heard that sentiment a lot, usually from people who would call me slurs in the same breath, but I think that it's worth giving some thought to regardless. What it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, what it means to give up those things are all discussions that would wildly shift depending on the person you're talking to. For me, as someone who was born and raised in the good old American Midwest, surrounded by traditional family values, I believed to be a man was to be strong, to take charge, to bear the weight of the world's problems on your shoulders and never complain. Women were supposed to be there to give support to these men through making their home lives easier, making food, raising kids, being an object of desire that wouldn't dare add her problems on top of the rest he was already dealing with. Giving up your position within the system wasn't really an option that was ever talked about. I never knew why, and still don't really understand why, but I hated the track that masculinity put me on in my life. The few times I would bring this up to adults, usually having it forced out of me, particularly women, would always reply with, "Well, you don't know what it's like to be a woman. What makes you think it's any better than being a man?" I would often sit there silently thinking how to answer those questions, and I was only able to repeat, "I don't know," over and over again. I understood that women obviously have their own struggles with how they're expected to perform in society. It's not that I was blissfully unaware, or rather that I thought these problems would be easier to deal with. No, I got it from the extent that I was able to from the outside. It's just that those issues would be much more manageable than whatever I was dealing with now. My life has improved so much since transitioning. I never thought it would fix me because at that point I didn't even realize to the extent I was broken. Rather than dealing with the issues that come alongside manhood or womanhood, I've been able to grapple with my own struggles outside of gender by being who I am now, feeling comfortable to actively work on bettering myself, not just for me, but for everyone who truly cares about me. It was less like trying to repair an emotional dam that had been on the verge of overflowing. It was honestly closer to opening up the floodgates that hadn't been touched in a lifetime. I think what I'm trying to get at here is that Oshimi gets it too, to an extent. His original idea of what it meant to be a woman was overly deitized as being the thing that would fix him. Being a woman would solve all of his internal conflict. However, now, upon further reflection, he's realized that this isn't the case at all. Going from the perceived boat of masculinity to the boat of femininity would only come with its own host of new problems, while ignoring the ones that he has yet to face within himself. Anyways, there's another character that gets introduced around this time, that being Rin, and she is a sort of bridge between Kei and Mitani. Not in the sense that because of her, Kei and Mitani get closer, but rather she represents different aspects of the two that are not able to be seen on the surface. She is an artist who really wants to draw Kei, but at first they refuse. Eventually, as Mitani and Yo's relationship gets worse, Kei agrees to be drawn by Rin. These two seemingly have no connection, but they're more linked than you may initially believe. Rin is having a really tough time drawing Kei, and she can't seem to make any progress on the canvas. That is until Kei asks if they should strip. Whoa, Kei asking beforehand? No, this is crazy. Kei gets fully nude, and Rin says how they're beautiful before Kei replies, I don't think I'm pretty at all, because it's something I borrowed. I borrowed a woman's erotic appearance. I gave up being a man, but that doesn't mean I want to be a woman. This in-between, wishy-washy body, I don't think I can ever be fond of it. Rin insists that they are pretty, that she thinks they're pretty, to which Kei asks if she likes her own body. Rin says no. Rin really embodies Mitani's internal turmoil. She sees her body as being unfit for getting a man, her duty as a woman. She beats herself up over this, just like Mitani does. However, instead of taking it on someone else, she constantly puts herself down, saying that she's too tall, that her breasts aren't big enough, that she seems too boyish. So Kei tells her to strip with them, and they stare at each other's bodies for a while before telling each other how pretty they are. They embrace, and this close, tender scene between the two is contrasted immediately in the next chapter by Mitani recounting childhood memories of her and the others. The closeness that Kei and Yo always seemed to share was always just out of her reach. When she finally did confess to Kei in middle school, the scene Yo saw wasn't the full picture. After the kiss, Kei says how they didn't feel anything and couldn't reciprocate her feelings. She asks why, over and over. Is it because she's a girl? Is it because she isn't Yo? Once again, cementing the idea that she has failed as a woman in her mind, and now she will take these feelings and frustrations out on Yo. Through all of this, Yo feels disgusting. Maybe Mitani is right. Maybe he really is gross because at the end of the day, whether he wants to admit it or not, there is a part of him that is attracted to Kei. He really tries to fall in love with Mitani, but he can't. I think there's at least some part of him that knows what she is doing is wrong, but he can't help but want that to be what fixes him. He is dirty. Lust has tainted him. The only way he can get clean is to get put back onto the right path. The path of masculinity. Mitani will make me a man, he thinks. All will go back to normal if I can just forget Kei and focus on this duty to be a man in love with a woman. But in actuality, he's ignoring what Kei has been telling him all along. It doesn't have to be like this. He too can give up his manhood if he only takes the first step. Girls. When I was in high school, I was obsessed with girls' bodies. I was on the boat of my own body, a boat that I could never get off of, a boat of daily masturbation, sexual desire, and my bruised member. From there in the distance, I saw another boat, that of a girl, and on it was my ideal body. I don't remember when that longing began. I found myself seeking it. At that time, magazines like that with pictures and manga series were usually lined up in bookstores. I'd buy them and stare at them behind my parents' backs. But were the naked girls I saw there objects of my desire? I think not. To me, they were the physical manifestation of my inner self, of who I really am. Somewhere along the way, I had misstepped my path and was trapped in a body that was getting dirtier and dirtier. In my fantasy, I was dissolving the boundary between myself and girlhood, becoming a girl, becoming a doll, getting off the boat of being a man. But why girls? Was it because I wanted to be far away from men and violence? I always felt alienated and inferior in school and society. As a man, I was pathetic and weak. I wanted to go back to the way I was before I was forced to be a man. Were girls the intersection of those desires and reality? But among them, choosing girls who are also women, the object of my sexual desire, would perhaps have meant that I had not quit being a man after all. So when the chance to have sex with a woman actually came, I forgot all about it. No matter how many times I tried, it didn't work. But eventually, little by little, I started to get it right. The trick I found was to erase my girl self only while I was doing it, to be one machine in the boat of manhood. But every time, the girl in me is wounded, bloodied, and torn to pieces. And then, before I know it, she becomes dim and begins to fade. I dream of what sex would be like after I stop being a guy. Sex where no one spills blood. I want to get out of manhood, out of the boat, out of this reality. But if that's possible, or where it is, that I don't know. Flipping the page leaves us with this image. No resolution, nothing to avert our attention, just her. I don't want to be too overly parasocial with Oshimi, and I think it's a little out of line to make the claim that I think Oshimi is trans. He's a real guy at the end of the day. It's kind of weird to theorize about that. But his deeply personal writings about how he deals with gender and how it's caused him so much pain really speaks to a lot of my own experiences in my life, and I often find myself repeatedly going back to this afterwards specifically. It's often the first thing that I think of when someone brings up Alice, and that's just due to how gut-wrenching it is. I can't say that I've personally felt the exact same way that Oshimi is describing, and if I had, I don't think I would be publishing it in my hit manga. However, I think these thoughts are central to uncovering the meaning in his works. Something about the image that accompanies the afterword strikes me so deeply. I have to censor it because YouTube, but this girl that I'm assuming Oshimi envisions is within himself, this androgynous appearance, her looking away with an expressionless face, her body all but ripped away, the emptiness that is exposed due to her wounds, it's nothing short of heartbreaking. Yo, in a very real sense, is Oshimi. Mitani is who he thought he wanted to become, Kei is who he wishes he could be. When Mitani and Yo do have sex, the only way Yo is able to perform his role is by imagining him and Kei together somewhere free from societal expectations. This isn't even to say that he is trying to replace Mitani with Kei in his mind. No, he's trying to go somewhere else entirely, envisioning a life that he believes is unattainable. At one point, Mitani and Yo bump into Rin and Kei while they're out shopping. Mitani begins to show off her sexual control she has over Yo in front of Kei, to which Kei starts crying. They run off as Mitani makes fun of them to Yo, and they carry on with their date. Although this time, Yo is finally starting to realize what's happening to him. In the next chapter, we get this contrast again. Terrible, loveless sex between Mitani and Yo, while Kei and Rin are able to share a closeness that the latter two can't seem to achieve. Kei breaks down in front of Rin, saying that Mitani needs boys, doesn't she, to become a woman? Lust and love are just means to an end. I won't get on board with either. Kei says how they came back because they wanted to free Yo from the depths of lust, to show him that you can break free, but maybe, just maybe, that was a selfish desire. Maybe the desire to break Yo free was really just Kei trying to externalize their own problems and place them upon him. In the way that Yo sees Kei as being pure, Kei sees Yo as their way to rid themselves of their own filth. Yo gets up from the bed while Mitani is staring up at him, where he says, "If this is sex, I don't want to do it ever again in my entire life." This fills Mitani with rage as she says, "I've suffered so much, worked so damn hard, and yet..." He then leaves her house and says, "This is hell." He thinks about Kei, what they must have gone through, and he finally has the thought, how can I get out of it? Where should I go? Let me out. He doesn't get much time to think on his own, as when he's laying in bed, he gets a call from Rin, saying that she needs to talk to him about Kei. He goes over to her place and sees the nude painting she's done of Kei. She says how they were able to free her and reminded her of her love for painting. She wants that for them too, but knows she can't do it because she isn't the one that Kei cares about the most. That is Yo. I want to get out of this swamp of lust, Yo says, but he doesn't know how. He doesn't know how to get his body clean. He wants to go back to when they were kids, before this stuff mattered. Rin assures them that he can go back. He just needs to follow Kei's lead. But how the fuck am I supposed to do that? He shouts before getting home as fast as he can. Laying in bed, he starts to think of Kei. Once again, this ethereal body of theirs, illuminating the dark surrounding Yo, while Mitani sinks further into the jet black abyss. Yo is at his breaking point. He knows his lust is what's controlling him, but he can't seem to let go, so he does the only thing he can think of: get rid of his manhood at the root. Welcome back. Yo wakes up in the hospital the next day as Kei, Mitani, and Rin all rush to his room. He tells Kei, I want to escape beyond boyhood or girlhood, and Kei tells him that they'll escape together and share a kiss. Yo says how he saw this image of Kei, one where they had short hair and were more androgynous. Kei says how they want to see that together. They want to find a new body with Yo. Mitani butts in, saying that there's no way that's possible, that leaving her behind causes her immense pain. Kei tells her that she could step down from being a woman and join, but she simply isn't able to accept that and cries into Rin's chest. A few days later, Yo meets Kei at their place and cuts their hair to make it shorter like in his vision. Kei states, "This is the second time you've changed me," and recounts a memory of the two in kindergarten. Back before, there were all these expectations of them and how they ought to be. Once their hair is short, Kei says how they should mix together one more time. The chapter that follows has almost no dialogue. It's all just images. Images that don't look anything like we've seen from this work previously. Gone are the heavy lines and dark shading. Everything is bright as we see their two souls blend together, making, as I think it's apt to call it, the soup of their very essence. Now, this is probably a good time to, finally state my main thesis, what I believe Welcome Back Alice is really all about. I believe that to be the decoupling of love and lust and labels, to be one with someone, to share this connection like no other without the burden of lust and societal expectations controlling your desires. Oshimi wants to escape manhood and womanhood, but where do you go? Well, it's less of a place and more of a state of mind. In order to understand the separation of love and lust and labels, you also need to rethink how you think about gender, sexuality, growing up, everything. When they finally come back and gaze into each other's eyes, the only words spoken are welcome back. We see all four of our characters as they finish up high school, and Yo and Kei still share some degree of closeness after everything. The final chapter is nothing like you'd expect out of an Oshimi manga, because it's actually really happy. We follow an older Yo as he's writing a letter to Kei, telling them how everyone's doing and seemingly just getting off work. As Yo writes the final words, I love you and wish you happiness. Tell me, Kei, where are you now? I miss you so much. If we meet again, I will, as someone calls his name. He turns and sees Kei, who smiles back at him. One thing I find particularly interesting in this work is the lack of labels given to the characters, and I do think this is an intentional choice. The biggest example is obviously Kei. You can read them as a lot of different things, and I think that's really cool. Personally, I would say there's something like agender and trans femme, but you can also say they're non-binary, or something else I haven't even thought of. The same goes for Yo and even Mitani and Rin. These characters don't have labels because it doesn't really matter in the context of the story. Sure, you could say Yo is pan or bi or something along those lines, but what really matters is that he likes Kei, no matter their gender or lack thereof. I say this is purposeful because labeling these characters within the narrative itself only really limits their own self-expression and who can project themselves onto them. While labels can be incredibly liberating, you can also feel confined to the labels you've chosen, even if you don't know that yet. I've always had a really weird relationship with labels, never really being happy with how I was labeled, but also not wanting to label myself as anything but. I was in a straight relationship with my girlfriend, but I never said it was straight. That was just assumed. And honestly, was I really straight? If she wanted to go by different pronouns or transition, either socially or medically or both, would I really care? I mean, I like her as a girl, and I know I like girls, but I also just like making people laugh. As long as she or he or they still laughed at my jokes, I don't think it would really matter that much. Still, I call myself a lesbian. It's what I feel comfortable with. It describes how my relationship is now, and honestly, it calls into question, was my relationship actually ever straight? That's how it was labeled, but if you asked me that now, I would say no, not really. I mean, she knew she was getting a girlfriend sooner or later. I told her that off the bat, and so I think confining what we've had all these years to a singular label takes away from what we've been through together. Not to mention this silly little thing called gender identity. Boy, oh boy, I guess I should say, she, oh, they, or something. I had a few friends in high school that were comfortable enough with putting themselves out there, proclaiming that they were trans and to refer to them with new names and pronouns. Me, being a normal human being, of course supported them and called them by whatever new name or pronoun they were going by that day while they were still figuring themselves out. All the while, I was watching from the sidelines, wishing I could do the same. Wishing to be free from the labels currently weighing me down. Towards the end of high school, I went down the typical pronoun path. He, they, he, she, they, them, they, she, while slowly changing my appearance and transitioning. I know that some people, some trans girls in particular, use she, they because they don't fully feel as if they've earned their womanhood, or maybe as if they haven't truly left their manhood behind. My relationship with it was like that for a while. I felt I hadn't earned it yet. Though now that's changed. I just kinda do whatever I feel like now. That feeling of comfortability in how I'm perceived wasn't something that just happened. God, I wish. It's taken years of effort and pain to figure out what works for me. Though now, I've been running into something that I've never really heard discussed before. Granted, I haven't really looked. That's the sort of feeling that my brain hasn't caught up to how I am now. When I'm just standing there looking at my phone, waiting for food, I perceive my hands and arms, my stomach, my legs. I see them as being those of a man. And while I'm caught up in my thoughts, a guy comes up to hit on me. To which I then put on my cute little voice and politely decline, hoping that he'll go away. It's not even that I'm brainwormed or anything. Seeing photos of myself or how I look in a reflection, I'm able to recognize like, oh yeah, I'm a girl now. But on a moment-to-moment basis, I really don't feel any different. But also, why would I? I think what I'm trying to say here, in terms of Welcome Back Alice and Shuzo Oshimi, is that the idea of the boat of masculinity or the boat of femininity is actually flawed. I don't think you ever really change what boat you're on. You just rearrange it until it suits you better. Giving it a new paint job, slapping a new name on the side, replacing the mast. At the end of the day, it's still your boat, just one that you'd rather sail on. People will make assumptions based on how they see your boat and slot it into one of manhood or womanhood, but that doesn't mean that your boat is that. That's just what they think. You might even agree with them, unknowing that you're letting on water and will have to confront making the repairs sooner or later. Getting off the boat is tricky because in a world dictated by those who have been sailing smoothly their whole lives, no one ever bothered to teach you how to swim. And if you drown in the process, no one would ever blame the boat. It sails just fine for me, they say, but they're the ones who put you on it in the first place. And if you do manage to stay afloat, where do you go? There's no land as far as the eye can see. People sail right past you because why should they look in the water? No one's crazy enough to brave the sea with their own two legs. And so you have to stake your own claim, building your own land using the scraps of boats that have long since been torn apart, boats that were once labeled just like yours was, but now are merely scraps of wood. And maybe along the way, you'll see someone else trying to keep their head above the tide and you throw them a line. It doesn't matter what boat they got off of, all that matters is that they got off and they're here now, that they're safe now. No longer sailing towards a horizon that no one's ever reached on a boat that's decaying as they refuse to acknowledge the gaping hole in the side. Because here, where you're together, there's no need for the boat anymore. Being in your arms is enough for me. What was I talking about again? Sorry, I blacked out and came to while trying to figure out how to write something impactful, but then cut it off with a joke so I don't sound too pretentious. What? Anyway, Welcome Back Alice is like nothing else I've ever read, and would you believe me if I told you it's not even my favorite Oshimi work? It just so happens someone beat me to the punch with Inside Mari. Seriously, if Alice at all interested you, I cannot recommend that as well as other works enough. Please go read them. Blood on the Tracks fucked me up so bad. Inside Mari made me cry like 5 times. The Flowers of Evil made me so uncomfortable the whole time. Happiness... I actually didn't really care for that one. And his first big work, Drifting Net Cafe... Okay, well you got like a solid 4 to work through for homework, so we can ignore those last 2 if we want. Like all of his work, Alice is a deeply personal exploration of lust and past traumas, dealing with societal expectations forced onto one as they grow into adulthood. I feel an innate sense of voyeurism peeking into his life like this, how he thinks, how he feels. I feel as if I've formed a parasocial relationship with this man over the last few years of consuming every word he's ever written. Still though, I'm glad he chose to share. His works have impacted me deeply, and I know I'm not the first nor the last one to say that. And so I'll leave you with one final answer to the question many pose coming in to welcome back Alice. Just who the hell is Alice? Well, the answer may shock you because